Bit. I'm going to switch it over to Mike Mendenhall. He's our associate editor here at the Business Record. He's curated a great group of folks and a good program here for you today, so you can learn a little bit more. We're going to be discussing a little bit deeper some of the things Brian talked about, some of the things Wade talked about as well. So Mike, go ahead and take it from here.
Thank you, Chris, and almost good afternoon to everybody, about 3 minutes away. Today, we're very excited to have a trio of panelists who lead, think, and act every day on our focus here today, which is the best strategies to help industries grow in Iowa. So I'd like to introduce all three of them, then we're going to have about a 30-minute panel discussion on that topic. So first, I'd like to introduce Mike Ralston. He's the president of the Iowa Association of Business and Industry. Mike was elected the ABI president in November of 2005. Prior to his service there, Mike was appointed by then Iowa Governor Tom Vilsack and served almost 3 years as the director of revenue for the state of Iowa. He led a staff of nearly 400 employees in administering Iowa's tax laws, collection operations, internal audit systems, and other essential functions. He was also the director of the policy and law for Iowa for Quest Communications. Prior to joining Quest in 1999, Mike was the president of the Iowa Taxpayers Association. An interesting fact, at age 18, Mike was elected mayor of Grundy Center and reelected 3 times. So Mike, thank you so much for being here with us today. Next, I'd like to introduce Chris Deal. Chris is director and mechanical engineer at Modus Engineering. Chris is a business owner, engineer, a farmer, and a community leader from Jefferson, Iowa. After earning a mechanical engineering degree from Iowa State University, Chris's ventures have included teaching in inner city Kansas City, starting nonprofits, and rehabilitating several historic buildings in downtown Jefferson. In 2011, Chris started with Modus Engineering, where he now serves as a partner. In 2016, Chris returned to his family farm to help co-manage the family business, Deal's Orchard. Chris and his wife, Tracy, have been married for 14 years and have 3 children. Chris, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. And last but definitely not least, we have Jill Wilkins. She is the executive director of NewBoCo Innovation Collaborative in Cedar Rapids. Jill joined the nonprofit, which they call NewBoCo for short, in 2016 as an events director to produce EntreFest, an entrepreneurship and innovation conference. She became the COO of that organization in 2021 and then executive director in December of 2023. Previously, she was the event planner for Cedar Rapids Metro Economic Alliance and Cedar Rapids Downtown District for 10 years. She lives in Lisbon, Iowa with her husband Thad, son Hagen, and fur baby Archie. Jill also is musical theater and teaches musical theater at Dance Arts Iowa in Mount Vernon and is the choreographer for the Mount Vernon High School musical production. So Jill, thank you so much for being with us. So as you can see, we have a really great mix of experts, specialties, and geographies, people across the state. So I'd like to start our questions off with Mike. So Mike, if you could just, pretty basic, pretty simple to start. Which industries in Iowa do you feel are best positioned to grow in the coming decade?
Well, Mike, first, thank you to you and the Business Record for the Envision Iowa series. We look forward to it every year and appreciate the Business Record's leadership on that front. And thank you, too, for that incredibly thorough introduction. Hey, everybody, great to be with you today. Really always great to see Brian Waller, and now I owe him at least lunch for all his kind words, but the folks at the Technology Association are doing great work and really moving the needle for Iowa on tech issues. And at ABI, we appreciate it very much. I can't believe Brian didn't say every company's a technology company, because I believe I've heard him say it about 1 million times, and he's right. Thanks, too, for the opportunity to serve on this panel. Everybody knows about NewBoCo and the things they're doing, and everybody knows about what's happening in Jefferson, so I'm looking forward to what Jill and Chris have to say. When it comes to industries best positioned to grow, Mike, I want to highlight manufacturing, of course. At ABI, we represent a number of leading Iowa industries, but our primary focus is Iowa manufacturing. And just like Iowa's a tech state, Iowa's a manufacturing state. And one of the reasons we see it poised for growth, and by the way, thank you, Wade, for the information you shared and you all saw in the survey that manufacturers are optimistic about the future. That's one of the reasons we think manufacturing is poised for growth. Revenues in manufacturing are not now what they were a couple of years ago, but they're still very strong. And in fact, what this current period has done is allow some folks to sort of catch up. We have global manufacturers in Iowa like Deere, Collins Aerospace, you name it. We have a ton of smaller manufacturers that are still pretty good size with hundreds of employees like Atlantic Bottling and Stellar Industries and those sorts of folks. And many of them, we do a survey every quarter. 60% of those who responded to our survey indicated that they were going to make a capital expenditure before the end of calendar year 24. That's another reason we see manufacturing poised for growth. Capital expenditures like a plant expansion or a multi-million-dollar piece of equipment. Folks don't do that unless they think business is going to come along with it. So we think that's another reason. I would note that a lot of Iowa manufacturing is related to agriculture, but not all of it. And commodity prices are down. That's driving much of the leveling off in manufacturing currently. But most economists see prices rising again in late 2025 or early in the first or second quarter of 2026. And that's another reason we feel like manufacturing is poised for growth. So Mike, maybe I've gone too long, but I'll end it there.
That sounds great, Mike. Thank you for all that information. We'll get back to manufacturing a little bit later in the panel. So Jill, to you, same question to you. Which industries do you feel your position at NewBoCo are best positioned to grow in the coming decade?
Sure. Just to echo what Mike said, thanks so much for having me, and it's great to be a part of this conversation today. With NewBoCo, we have the opportunity to work with a really wide range of businesses, from those just starting out with that idea stage, moving all the way through, looking to grow and scale. And so, throughout that work, we're seeing a variety of areas that really do seem to be key areas for growth. So certainly aligning with some of what Brian said within the tech space, we're seeing a lot of interest within the healthcare, telehealth area, that ability to continue to expand access to various areas. Also with ed tech, being able to continue to connect schools through different resource opportunities. So we're seeing a lot of interest in those areas and opportunities for those businesses to really grow and to be able to thrive. Another area that we particularly doing some work in is in the sustainable ag, regenerative ag space. One of our current staff members is really seeing a lot of opportunity, in particular with some work in Southeast Iowa, and how they're pulling together opportunities for communities to really look at being sustainable as a real community and leveraging the agriculture pieces within those different areas in the community. So that's another piece. On the small business side, we're seeing that, certainly a lot of us know that our habits changed post-pandemic, and business owners are seeing the opportunity to leverage that. So mobile catering, food trucks, mobile dog grooming, things that make the everyday life a little more simple. Is something that we're seeing a lot of growth opportunity and interest in. And also then, just to kind of close up my part, the using that data that Brian mentioned and really making data-driven decisions to have some more niche businesses and really identifying that customer base, and then really focusing those niche businesses because they're able to, just have a lot more information there. And so we're seeing some of them just grow so fast, and they're needing to be able to leverage other resources because of that growth. And so that's been exciting for us.
Great. Thank you, Jill. And Chris, I want to bring you into the conversation now. You kind of have your hand in a few different industries, with both from the engineering side and the agricultural side. So what industries in Iowa that are you seeing that are poised for growth here in the coming years?
Well, first, thanks, Mike, again, for the chance to be a part of this. And certainly anytime I can be on a panel with Mike Ralston and Jill with NewBoCo, and two organizations that I've leveraged over the years for some of the many wonderful things that they do, it's an honor, it's a pleasure. So no, I do get to see a few different industries here in the state. And I appreciate getting to go after Mike and Jill, because I can just kind of ditto what they said in terms of manufacturing, in terms of tech. I will echo further some of the comments about tech, and especially tech in rural, having been a part of some initiatives with tech and tech education in Jefferson. I think there's incredible opportunity if we can get over those two hurdles, right? The workforce, getting people educated and understanding what opportunities even exist in tech. In many of our rural communities, there's still this lack of understanding, lack of awareness of where that industry can take you. And we're overcoming that, but there's still work to go there. But as people understand that, there's incredible excitement. We've got the capability, we've got people who can do the work, just helping them understand what opportunities really exist, and then the willingness to take on those risks and try something new and outside of the box. But we can compete against some of the historic tech sectors on either coasts right here in Iowa in so many different ways. So yeah, tech industry, lots and lots of opportunity there. In the construction trades, wearing the Modus hat, there certainly are some headwinds right now that we're seeing, but there are some sectors that are really starting to pop up with opportunity. Anything and everything related to sustainability. There's new incentives that are out there. What the Inflation Reduction Act has created in terms of some of the ways that money can be leveraged that didn't happen before with public entities, with school districts. Has moved the needle on projects that previously had been stuck, and so we're starting to see some of that move, and there's excitement there. Municipal work, water, clean water, things like that. We're seeing a lot of opportunity, and I'll take that sustainability vein and move it into ag too. I mean, yeah, we're in a downturn. It's going to be a tough year, probably a couple years in ag. But there's a lot of movement in sustainability. There's a lot of interest in how our food is being grown here. And there's opportunities there for people in our ag sector to take advantage of that and use that to grow.
Thanks, Chris. And Mike, I'd like to circle back to you. Chris kind of started mentioning, kind of started moving into this area. What factors and kind of incentives, whether it be government financial incentives, industry factors, do you think need to be maintained to keep the state a favorable destination for new and existing industries? And maybe you could speak, maybe directly to manufacturing, or if there's other industries you see that could need to maintain certain factors and incentives to stay strong.
You bet, Mike. Iowa really is a great state to do business, and there are a number of reasons for that. But if we're going to talk about public policymakers in the state, both parties, the executive branch, have done really a good job of reducing the cost of government, ensuring taxation is fair and predictable. Maybe more than anything else, predictable is helpful to business. They've incented certain behaviors. We think that's important. I don't think we give the governor and the legislators of both parties enough credit for what they've done to make sure that government works for Iowans. And so when it comes to doing business, Iowa's a great example, but of a state in which you can succeed. Let me give you a specific example of something the legislature has done, which is, we think, pretty important. Again, a bipartisan situation. A few years ago, the governor and the legislature created the Manufacturing 4.0 program. Many of you have heard about this. This program provides incentives for manufacturers to improve their processes, to automate, to increase efficiency, a whole bunch of other things, and all, of course, around the goal of increasing productivity. And perhaps most importantly, it involves an assessment of their existing operations. That assessment is done by the Center for Industrial Research and Service at Iowa State University. And so while we have these great global manufacturers we talked about a minute ago, we've got a number of smaller manufacturers that have really benefited simply from that assessment process and recommendations that result in allowing them to do processing better. And so we could go on, but that's one specific example I'd use, and it's been a big one.
Okay. Jill, how about you? With the folks you work with at NewBoCo, what factors and incentives do you think need to be maintained to keep the state of Iowa a favorable destination for existing and new industries?
I think certainly access to funding for various levels of business is a big key one for us. Certainly private capital resources, having consistent access for businesses to be able to pitch to those potential funders. We have some great partners with that within the state, but if they're at a point where they aren't in deployment, for example, or have closed a fund, there's that time that there might be a lag of access. And so being able to make sure that we're able to continue with that resource and to grow that is certainly a key piece that we see. Also on the funding side for small businesses, or that access to maybe smaller amounts at the beginning. And our Kiva program is one example of that. And there's other various programs within the state. But we certainly, it's something that comes up often. And so being able to have multiple access points for that lower barriers to them is something that we really want to make sure that we're continuing to identify, to champion what we currently have available to us in those areas, but look at how we can also continue to grow that. Because so many times with every business we're working at, it all goes back to that initial funding to be able to support the start of that business or the growth of that business, and to also ensure that it is along the way really having a strong foundation of how they are creating that. So it really does have the best opportunity to grow and mature and hopefully, be a long-standing business within the state of Iowa for a long time. The other area I would think, just to continue to make sure that we are favorable as a state, is that just continued industry focused work and working together through all areas within that strategy. How do we continue to make sure that as we are working through our new area, NewBoCo, where you're looking at more of the startups all the way towards the more mature industries, and having that pipeline and that strategy throughout, so that we really are focusing in within a state and collectively working together to have those really strong industry sectors from point A to point B can be really, really, meaningful and impactful for encouraging strong businesses here.
So Chris, can you maybe you speak to it, whether it be from the building and engineering standpoint or from agriculture? What are you seeing? You started talking a little bit about the Inflation Reduction Act and some of the resources that have been available there from a federal level. But what factors and incentives do you think need to be maintained to keep Iowa that favorable destination for existing and new industries?
Well, I think one, workforce is critical, right? And I'm guessing we might talk more about that as we go. So setting that aside, I mean, the things that we can provide, like Jill was saying, to support entrepreneurship, to support small businesses. I mean, I look around Jefferson and Greene County and our strength. We got 9,000 people in the county. We have an incredible manufacturing base, and it's all homegrown businesses that started here. They chose to grow here. They chose to stay here. And that was rural entrepreneurship 20, 30, 40 years ago. And so, like, when we look forward 20, 30, 40 years from now, what are this next round of companies going to be? The ones that our communities can grow around. And so anything we can do to lower the threshold of starting a business and then growing that business, I mean, that's critical for the longevity of our communities. And along that line, the idea of we need to have strong communities, right? Because they need to have not only these strong businesses that enable kind of that cornerstone of the community, but they also need to be a place where people want to move to, where they want to raise a family. And one of Iowa's strengths has always been that we have such a wide breadth of communities, whether it's everything that's going on in Des Moines, the great things there, to the smaller communities, and being able to maintain that diversity of opportunity and community, and especially in rural. Rural's been tough, but it's great to see that there's some opportunity and there's some optimism from the data we'd seen before, because I do think that people are recognizing that after so many years of people thinking small communities are just fading away, that no, they're doing the opposite. There's opportunity there that doesn't exist in larger communities. There's a lot of wonderful things happening. And so what we can do to support activities like that, Main Street Iowa is a wonderful organization that, one, brings some funds to the table, but also it teaches communities how to effectively help themselves. How to organize, how to bring volunteers to the table, how to take it's not a silver bullet, but it's a shotgun approach to everything they're doing. And I think that strength in communities has that long-lasting, overarching effect for the state as a whole.
Mike, let's go ahead and start kind of go into that conversation on workforce a little bit. It was interesting at the top of the presentation, Baton Global was sharing data about optimism in the manufacturing industry, and even though recently we have been seeing some layoffs, particularly in ag-related manufacturing. So I was going to ask you, Mike, how long do you think that kind of, I wonder whether you characterize it as a downturn or that kind of slowing in hiring with manufacturing, how long do you think that's going to last, and how do you see that impacting other supporting industries and the broader economy in Iowa?
Boy, lots of questions all wrapped up in that question about layoffs, Mike. And I don't know. Again, we've looked at data, and a lot of economists seem to think that there's going to be a turn in commodity prices. So I'll talk about that in relation to layoffs sometime late next year, first or second quarter of 2026. So that's still over a year away. So there are a lot of factors that played a part in these layoffs, but commodity prices declining is certainly a big factor. Corn and beans were at historic levels just a year ago. Prices were at least $3 higher for both of those commodities. In a business like farming, margins are so tight, $3 is a big, big deal. So in those days, farmers were feeling pretty good. So they bought new equipment, new implements, and that's not happening now. And that's why that's one big factor about why the layoffs are happening now. I will say this though, remember that John Deere not predicted, but said that these layoffs would be coming. So it allowed some folks to make some decisions to be able to search for new positions. We all know about Tyson closing in Perry. Again, that was announced. In both these cases, these are terrific employers, Deere and Tyson's, and they gave support to their employees so that they had a bridge between now and future employment. A lot of those folks, and this isn't just rhetoric, have been picked up. Again, workforce is our number one issue, as Chris and Jill have pointed out. And so a lot of these folks were able to be picked up by other businesses. But if I'm one of the folks that hasn't been picked up, that doesn't make me feel any better. And the good news is, again, that the state has a robust program for unemployment insurance. Iowa benefits are some of the best in the country. We think we can weather this at ABI on behalf of our member companies. And again, if we've got a year to go, that's one thing. If it's going to be much longer than that, we'll have to revisit it and see what we think.
Great. Thanks, Mike. And then Jill, kind of, I'm moving to you on that particular question, but maybe maybe talk about the folks that you're working with when they're kind of looking at that environment and stuff. What are some of the things that they're thinking about, and some of the, when it comes to jobs and workforce?
Mm-hmm. It's sometimes I feel like it's a broken record, right? Because it's something that is certainly been a topic for a long time is workforce within the state. Some of the challenges in particular with the entrepreneurs that we're working with is just the affordable workforce, as we've mentioned, the daycare, just even summer times with the daycare, the balancing life and work and being able to manage that is really challenging. It can lead to burnout real quick, or just deciding to not even, go further. And so as we continue to identify how we can really provide support through various different channels when it comes to that larger holistic support for the person, I think that can really then help benefit and elevate that workforce. And that's, through a lot of collaboration with other industry partners and social partners that can help expand access. And it is one that has certainly been ongoing for a long time, but that still is kind of where we see the biggest struggle, is that work-life balance, to be able to go after that dream that they have, because there is, there's a lot of steps to that. And it's very challenging to be able to have the time to really focus and to be able to go through all of the different, pieces that it takes to get that business started. And so whatever we can do as we look towards building our workforce to be able to, again, look at how we can support that person as a whole, I think is going to be able to help elevate us as a state.
Great. And Chris, very quickly to you, when you know, as somebody in agriculture, when you're looking at this kind of slowdown in hiring, what are you you know, what are you looking for, you know, as far as a kind of a rebound and how it's impacting other industries that might support your business?
Well, anytime there's a slowdown, there's also some opportunities out there, right? And so we talk about value add, right? So industries that are finding ways to use the cheap corn, the cheap beans, right? There's some opportunity there. Now, I produce some of those cheap corn and cheap beans. It's not fun right now being in that world, but agriculture, like everything, has cycles, and so you know that it's coming. You think ahead and give yourself the resilience to get through that. But yeah, I think that some of these downturns, there is some unique opportunities there. It comes back to workforce again, right? Some of these value add things are labor intensive. We got to figure out a way that we can provide that labor and provide the people to help with that creation. But that's how you keep the value of that product in our state too. If we can create those value added steps here within Iowa and avoid sending it somewhere else for someone else to do that next step, that's how we create some of that keep some of that here for us to enjoy.
Great.
Hey, Mike, may I jump back in here just for a
Please.
second?
Please go ahead.
Okay, everybody knows I sound the smartest when I'm not talking, so this is dangerous, but I do want to cover a couple other quick points. One is Jay Johnson asked about what's happening to help folks identify export opportunities, and that great work happening in Iowa on that front. Three things. One, I don't know of an Iowa manufacturer who doesn't constantly look at export opportunities, so they're very aggressive and they do a great job of that. Two, the Iowa Economic Development Authority has a terrific program to help exporters, and that's a big deal. And third, the Iowa Export Council is also out there helping that group of people, so that's important. The other thing I want to say is I got a text and somebody asked me about, okay, we're worried about layoffs, but what if these companies go out of business? And so I'll just quickly say, most Iowa manufacturers are conservative in their business practices. I don't mean politically conservative, I mean operationally conservative. They don't carry a lot of debt. Their balance sheet is strong. They have cash. They can hopefully ride this out. They don't have a lot of inventory they have to sell off at a loss. Most are quite innovative about operating. So I'm generalizing there, but the good news is there's a lot in place to help us ride this out and make the situation not nearly as critical as it would be. Mike, thank you.
No, absolutely, Mike. And I love the fact that not only are you looking at what people are saying in our chat, but you're getting text during this panel. So that clearly this is truly an interactive endeavor. So it's great. And Mike, I'm going to stick with you. I just wanted to see, you know, we talked a little bit about barriers to business growth, but talk a little bit about what we can do to overcome them. Since Envision Iowa, we're about solutions. We're about trying, you know, what barriers are you seeing, and how do you think we can overcome them here in the state? You touched a little bit on it, but if you go a little deeper.
Well, for us, and again, I'm talking about barriers for our customers, manufacturing, and we have some barriers at ABI too, but we can talk about that another time. We've all talked about it. Number one barrier, workforce. We need more people in Iowa. Not a lot we can do at ABI about that, but encourage families to have children. And we have been very active in the front when it comes to immigration reform, in contact with our Iowa legislative congressional delegation all the time about that. We really need some of that stuff. But here are some things that we're trying to do here to help with that barrier, workforce. Automation is a big deal. And I think everybody knows now there used to be this concern that if a company automated, it meant there would be fewer jobs. That's most definitely not the case. What it really means is the company becomes more efficient and productive, and folks who were doing those kinds of jobs are now doing more value-added jobs. At ABI, we created a program some years ago called Elevated Advanced Manufacturing. If you go to elevateiowa.com, you can learn all about it. That's a way to help with workforce issues. And so a lot going on, and that's our major barrier. There are some things like supply chain, capital in some cases, but Mike, those aren't the things that we see are holding our member customers back. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. And Jill, same question to you. What are the current barriers to business growth in Iowa that you're seeing, and how do you think, how do we overcome them? What are the solutions?
Yeah. I think something that maybe we haven't mentioned yet, just continuing the consistent access to the various educational opportunities and access to resources. There is a lot of great, I think, opportunity and untapped entrepreneurial spirit within many of the communities, whether that be some of the rural communities that Chris had mentioned, that there is such an entrepreneurial spirit that's just fostered within those rural communities. I happen to live in one myself, and being able to work with some of them to just bring together all of the resources that are already there and to just start to foster that ecosystem, I think is one thing that it's there, it's just not tapped yet. Also, just being able to work with and expand our partnerships. There are some I think Mike mentioned the immigrant population. There is, again, a vast entrepreneurial spirit there that if we are able to expand the access for the educational content we have and resources to address language barriers and just understanding some of the systems that are in place, there is a great potential for a really wonderful expanded growth opportunity, within those populations. So, those are some of the barriers that come to mind first, but I also think are ones that have some really exciting opportunities to address them and to then be able to see, the positive things that come from it.
Great. And Chris, same question to you. The current barriers you see to business growth and those solutions that we can have to overcome them.
Yep, and it's still in that workforce vein, right? It's finding ways to tell our story. I mean, Iowans were historically fairly humble people, and so we need to find a way to do a better job of expanding and conveying what's available here in our state. Because we don't have mountains, we don't have oceans, but we got about everything else, right? Where else would you rather raise a family? Where else would you rather have your kids grow up? The opportunities that are throughout our state. And so the challenge is how do we get above the noise and convey that information, right? First, let's make sure the people who are growing up here know the opportunities. And if they want to take off, I left for 3 years. It was great. I came back, right? And that when they're ready to have a family, when they're ready to start thinking that longer term, like, let's get them back. And those are the people who already have ties here. Second, how do we start to bring more people here? There's an interesting study, I think it was 2022. They talked about the brain drain of Iowa and about all of our graduates leaving the state. What I think they left out is that we actually do a really good job of bringing people into the state for education. If you look at our percentage of out-of-state attendees at Iowa State at our universities, it's high. And so we have this opportunity to capture these people. So many of them are leaving above the rate, but we're starting with a lot more. And so how do we tell our story and create this awareness of opportunities to the people who we are exposed to a greater degree? There's great initiatives already. IEDA is doing some really unique things in terms of talking about just Iowa as a place to live. Empower Rural Iowa Initiative started a rural return program. We use that in Jefferson in terms of incentivizing people to come out. There's a lot of opportunities. We just got to take that to that next level. And I'll echo immigration. We got to get immigration figured out. We feel it in agriculture. It's a critical piece. It's got to be a part of the equation, and we gotta do everything we can to figure that out.
Thank you, guys. It's been a great conversation so far, and just that level of expertise we really appreciate for our audience. We've got about 5 minutes left in the panel, so I just wanted to I will go around the horn one more time here and ask, what are some of the top priorities for your areas and organizations around business opportunity, and then if you have any other final thought you'd like to add as we're wrapping up today. So Mike, I'll go ahead and start with you.
Thanks, Mike, and thanks again to the Business Record. No kidding, this is a big deal and great to have everybody come together. And that's kind of where I'd start with what we're focused on in the future. The good news is, you can tell I'm an optimist, but there is a lot happening among private employers, not just manufacturers in the state. But I've been here maybe too long at ABI, but when I joined almost 20 years ago, if you would have told me that childcare, healthcare, transportation, housing, those would be business issues, I wouldn't have thought that was right. But over the course of the past 2 or 3 years, a lot of Iowa employers have made progress in those areas. They provide healthcare on site for their employees. Same with childcare. They either incent or provide support for transportation. They work with their community to help provide housing starts. Chris and the folks in Jefferson have done some incredible things there. And so those kinds of things are happening. Lots of things happening with alternative shifts, an entire shift of non-English speaking people, differences in times worked and that sort of thing. So my point is there's a lot going on. Again, I'm biased, I'm an Iowan, but Iowans tend to not complain. They tend to go to work, and that's what's happening, and that's exciting. So thanks again, Mike. Thanks for the business record.
Thank you. Jill, same final question to you. What are the top priorities in your area and organization around business opportunity, and any final thoughts you have?
Sure. So a couple of our focuses, one, it really is on that hyper focus of intentional collaboration to really ensure that we are helping the business owners that we work with navigate the resources that are available to them. And that's from a local to regional to statewide level. We have wonderful resources available within the state, but that can be sometimes a daunting process for a business owner to navigate and figure out where their best access for support is. So we really want to dig into seeing how we can best help facilitate that, identify where we fit in, but really ensure that we are helping with that access point and that navigation for our business owners. We also are, in a similar vein, really wanting to think of going back to that industry and that strategic work and how we really can think about that full pipeline of where we start with that initial startup idea and how that can really leverage into the larger corporate and manufacturing sectors. So there's a lot of real great access to potential federal funding out there if we have strategies in place to be able to leverage that and have plans in place for that. And we really see that there's a lot of opportunity there for us to really focus in on how we can really thread that full business line and opportunity and go after that. And so again, it really goes back to that leveraging those wonderful resources we have in the state and really being collaborative, which is something I think is really special about us as a state of Iowa, in that we do really have partners that work well together, that like to, right? That's not always the case. And so I am very grateful for that, because that really makes some of the potential opportunities very exciting and also feasible.
Thanks, Jill. And Chris, we'll give you the final thought. Top priorities of your area and organization, and anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, well, like Mike, I got a personal text or message sent to me. So there's an interest in how the pumpkin crop looks for this year, and so we see opportunity in the pumpkin and apple crop, right, with the family business. It looks good, Sven. But we look at where are these, like we're in an economic downturn, right? We're in potentially some challenges, but wherever there's challenges, there's opportunities, and it's just trying to figure out where those opportunities exist, and then going after them. Right, so we're continuously looking for that, whether it's finding ways to provide unique experiences from the family business for the families who come out, finding ways in the engineering construction world. What's that next sector, the sustainability sector? Where else is there going to be opportunities? But big picture, and just like Jill and Mike said, there's no place that I'd rather be in terms of the opportunity to go through, whether it's challenging times or it's good times. We have so many unique strengths in Iowa. The public-private partnerships, we didn't talk about that a lot, but holy cow, that's been a huge piece to what we've done in Jefferson. And it is unique. Our level of access to government, our level of access to resources, it's not like this everywhere. In terms of being able to work with, people like Mike, like Jill with their organizations, being able to access the people who represent us in government. Everybody wants to see progress. Everybody wants to help each other get there. And so even in times where it gets a little bit tight and it's challenging, it's a great place to be, and I'm optimistic, just like the data had shown.
Great. Chris, thank you, and thank you for that little treat of bringing us into fall before we end too. So that's great. That's great. Again, so thank you again for the robust panel discussion, and I'm going to send it back to Chris Konetsky.